Please just get bigger, you small shit.
Jide had everything a young Nigerian man could want. Or so it seemed. At 27, he had a good job, a fine car, and enough swag to turn heads when he walked into a room. In his neighborhood, people respected him. The guys hailed him, and the ladies smiled when he passed by. But despite all that, Jide carried a terrible secret, one that kept him awake at night. His biggest problem wasn't money, work, or even family drama. It was something far more personal, something he could never talk about with anyone: his size. At first, it hadn't really bothered him. He had been in relationships before and none of his exes had outright complained. But lately, something had changed. His girlfriend Sandra had been acting funny. It wasn't like she was saying anything bad, but Jide could read her reactions. Sometimes, when they were watching movies together, her eyes would linger just a little too long on certain scenes, especially the ones with those kinds of men. The worst part was his friends. Osas and Femi, his guys since university days, had a bad habit of throwing indirect shots. Some guys they suffero, Osas had once said during a guys' hangout, laughing as he sipped his beer. Imagine being a grown man and still they carry baby cucumber. Femi had burst into laughter, nearly choking on his suya. Omo, wahala! Small boys, full town. Jide had laughed along, but deep down, his stomach twisted into a tight knot. Were they talking about him? Had Sandra told someone? He tried to brush it off, but the thoughts refused to leave his head. Was he a joke to them? The insecurity started messing with his mind. He noticed things he had never paid attention to before. The way Sandra's smile didn't reach her eyes sometimes. The way she shifted slightly whenever he tried to pull her closer. Was she just managing him? The more he thought about it, the worse he felt. One night, after another round of overthinking, he picked up his phone and started searching. How to increase size naturally. The results were plenty. Exercises, diets, even ridiculous stretching techniques. But Jide wasn't looking for hard work. He wanted quick results, fast and effective. That was when he saw it. A bold advert, shining like a beacon of hope, in the middle of his Facebook feed. Make your thing 10 inches overnight. Baba Oluto's Secret Enlargement Oil. 100% guaranteed. Jide's eyes widened. He clicked on the ad immediately. The page was filled with before and after pictures of men who had supposedly used the oil. The transformations were shocking. Some of the pictures didn't even look real, but the testimonials convinced him. Men were dropping comments under the post, thanking Baba Oluto for changing their lives. Omo, this thing work. My babe they fear me now. At Big Daddy 456, best decision I ever made. Now I fit stand confidently. At Macho Man 234, thank you Baba Oluto. My wife no fit. Leave me again. At Satisfied Customer 101. Jide scrolled through the comments, his heartbeat increasing. This was it. This was the solution he had been looking for. Without thinking twice, he clicked on the message button and typed, "Good evening, Baba. I need help." The reply came almost immediately. "My son, you have come to the right place. The gods have sent you to me." Jide felt a chill run down his spine. There was something about the way the message was phrased that made him uneasy. But he quickly shook off the feeling. Maybe Baba Oluto was just very confident in his work. "How much is it?" he typed back. "For you, my son. Only 50,000 naira. This is not ordinary oil. It is spiritual. It will work overnight." Jide's heart dropped. 50,000 naira, that was a lot of money. But then again, what was 50,000 naira compared to a lifetime of confidence? He checked his account balance. 14,500. He didn't have enough. His eyes darted around the room until they landed on his roommate, Kabiru, who was sitting on the floor eating iba and soup. "Kabiru, I beg I fit see 50,000 naira?" Jide asked casually, trying not to sound too desperate. Kabiru paused, his hand halfway to his mouth. "You dey mad? Who dey borrow 50,000 just like that?" Jide sighed. I go pay back na. Just help me run For wetting? Jide scratched his head. There was no way he could tell Kabiru the truth. Na business investment. Kabiru eyed him suspiciously, then shook his head. Guy, if you like, run, go, bet 9 jar. I no get problem. But if you no pay back in 1 week, I go break your leg. Jide grinned, shaking his roommate's hand. No wahala. 1 week, Edon, complete. With the money in hand, he quickly sent the transfer to the number Baba Oluto had given him. This was it. His life was about to change. As soon as the money left his account, Baba sent a voice note. Good, now listen carefully. You must come and collect the oil in person. This is not something we send by courier. The gods require your presence. Jide frowned. Ah, Baba, why? You want miracle, but you no fit make small sacrifice. Come to my shrine tomorrow. Your journey to greatness begins. Jide hesitated for a moment, but then he thought about Sandra, about Osas and Femi, about all the silent laughter behind his back. His grip tightened around his phone. Okay, Baba, I go come. Jide had never been this nervous in his life. As he sat in the back of the rickety old bus heading towards Ogun State, he kept glancing at his phone, reading Baba Oluto's last message over and over again. Come alone. Do not tell anyone where you are going. This is a sacred journey. The words felt ominous, but Jide shook off his doubts. This was his chance, his transformation. The drive took longer than expected, and by the time he arrived at the remote junction Baba had described, it was already late afternoon. The area was completely deserted, except for a small wooden kiosk where an old man was roasting corn. Jide hesitated, looking around. No sign of a shrine, no sign of Baba Oluto. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. A new message. Walk straight into the bush, the gods are waiting. Jide's stomach twisted. Bush? He squinted at the narrow, overgrown path ahead. What if this was a setup? What if they wanted to kidnap him? He exhaled sharply. Omo, forget fear. You don't pay 50,000 already. He stepped forward. The deeper he walked, the more the sounds of civilization faded behind him. No car horns, no market noise, just the rustling of leaves and the distant cawing of birds. His heartbeat quickened, and sweat trickled down his back. Finally, after what felt like forever, he saw it. A small thatched hut, surrounded by red cloths tied to tree branches. Oya, no turning back now, he muttered to himself and stepped forward. The door creaked open before he could even knock. Inside, the room was dimly lit with flickering candles. The air smelled of burnt herbs and something else, something old and powerful. And there, seated on a mat in the middle of the room, was Baba Oluto. The old man looked exactly like Jide had imagined. Dark, wrinkled skin, piercing eyes, and a head completely bald, except for a few stubborn white strands. His chest was bare, but he wore a leopard skin wrapper tied around his waist, and heavy red beads dangled from his neck. Jide swallowed hard. Baba Oluto looked him up and down, then sighed. Your problem a serious matter? Jide's throat went dry. You fit. Help me, Baba? The old man nodded slowly. I fit help you. But you go follow my instructions exactly as I talk am. No mistake, no question. Jide nodded quickly. I go follow. Baba Oluto reached beside him and pulled out a tiny brown bottle filled with dark, thick liquid. This powerful oil, Baba whispered, holding it up to the candlelight. Na only people way the gods choose fit, use Jide leaned forward, listening intently. When you reach house, Baba continued, rub 'em well. After 10 minutes, pour warm water for the area. In 3 hours, go long like python. Jide's chest tightened with excitement. Python. But, Baba's voice dropped lower, never tell anyone about this ritual, or the gods go vex. Jide shivered. I swear, Baba, I no go tell anybody. Baba Oluto handed him the bottle and placed a small black feather on top. Take, the journey don start. Jide grabbed the bottle with both hands, bowing deeply. "Thank you, Baba." As he left the shrine and hurried back to the junction, his heart pounded with anticipation. This was it. His life was about to change. The moment Jide stepped into his apartment, he locked the door and bolted it twice. He was shaking with excitement. No distractions, no interruptions. He placed the tiny bottle carefully on the bathroom sink and exhaled. "Okay, Jide, this now the moment." He peeled off his clothes, his hands trembling slightly. He popped the bottle open and immediately a strong herbal scent filled the air. It smelled ancient, powerful, sacred. "Rub am well," Baba's voice echoed in his head. He poured some of the oil into his palm and began massaging it in carefully. The cool, sticky liquid spread over his skin, and a strange, tingling sensation followed almost immediately. His heartbeat doubled. It was working. He checked the time. 10 minutes. Time for the next step. "After 10 minutes, pour warm water for the area." Jide paused. He knew Baba had said warm water, but what if, just what if, he used hot water? Wouldn't that make the effect faster? A sly grin spread across his face. "Baba say 3 hours, but if I use hot water, maybe no 1 hour ago take." Excited, he rushed to the kitchen, grabbed his electric kettle and filled it to the brim. As the water boiled, he felt his chest swell with pride. This was it, the final step to greatness. The kettle clicked off. He unplugged it, carried it carefully back to the bathroom, and stood in front of the mirror. No pain, no gain. He took a deep breath. And then, "Pah!" The instant the boiling water touched his skin, a pain unlike anything he had ever felt tore through his entire body. Jide screamed. His body convulsed violently, his legs buckling beneath him. His brain went blank, his vision blurred, his lungs refused to work. For a moment he thought he was dying. The pain was so intense that he collapsed onto the floor shaking. "Jesus! Jesus! Ah!" He clawed at the tiles, his screams filling the entire compound. His breath came in short, painful gasps. This wasn't normal pain. This was death. He tried to think. He needed to do something fast. Ice. Yes. He stumbled to the freezer, grabbed a handful of ice cubes, and shoved them against his burning skin. Bad idea. The ice was too cold. The pain doubled. "Ah!" He flung the ice away. "Palm oil! Yes, palm oil cures everything." He grabbed a bottle of palm oil from the kitchen and poured it all over himself. Nothing. The pain refused to stop. Sweat drenched his body. His entire lower half felt like it had been dipped in molten lava. In pure desperation, he yanked the standing fan closer and turned it to the highest speed. The air hit his skin like fire. "Manh00d! Ah!" Someone banged on the door. "Jide! Where'tin happen?" It was Kabiru, his roommate. Jide couldn't even form words. His body was shaking uncontrollably. "Guy, you dey okay? Open this door before I break am." In his panic, Jide stumbled towards the door, unlocked it and collapsed onto the bed. Kabiru burst in, and what he saw froze him in place. His roommate was covered in sweat, his boxers stained with oil, ice cubes on the floor, a kettle beside him, and his entire body trembling. Kabiru's eyes widened in horror. "Jide, where'tin you do?" Kabiru stood frozen at the doorway, his eyes wide with shock. His roommate, his guy, Jide, was sprawled across the bed, drenched in sweat, his body shaking like someone under a spiritual attack. The room smelled of burnt flesh, palm oil, and desperation. But it wasn't the sweat or the shaking that made Kabiru scream. It was what he saw between Jide's legs. "Jesus!" Kabiru staggered backward, gripping the doorframe. Jide tried to speak, but all that came out was a weak, pain-filled wheeze. His lips trembled as he pointed at Kabiru like a dying man asking for help. Kabiru didn't move. He couldn't. His brain was still trying to process why his roommate's manhood looked like overcooked meat. The next scream came from their next-door neighbour, Auntie Bola, who had heard the commotion and rushed over in her wrapper. The moment her eyes landed on Jide, she let out a dramatic gasp and clutched her chest. "Ah, Jide, you dongo-do ritual?" Within minutes, the entire compound was outside their door. People pushed their way inside, peeking through the doorway, whispering, pointing, laughing. "Omo, wetin happen? E be like say a pour acid for there. Chai, this one don spoil finish." Jide squeezed his eyes shut, wishing the ground would open and swallow him. The pain was unbearable, but the shame was even worse. And then, the worst possible thing happened. Someone pulled out their phone. "Make I record this thing? People need to see am." Before Jide could protest, a guy in a singlet held up his phone and started recording. "Ladies and gentlemen, una good afternoon. For this life make una no 2-day desperate. See as this guy use hot water spoil him future." Jide wanted to die. The pain, the embarrassment, the heat of the room, it was all too much. His vision blurred. His body went limp. And then, darkness. The first thing he felt when he woke up was cold. A different kind of cold. Not ice, not fan breeze, but the sterile, chilling air of a hospital. He tried to move, but a sharp, unbearable pain shot through his lower body. A groan escaped his lips. "Ah, young man, you're awake." The voice was calm, professional. A doctor. Jide forced his eyes open. The doctor, a middle-aged man with glasses, was flipping through some medical notes. "How do you feel?" the doctor asked. Jide didn't answer. How was he supposed to describe this level of pain and regret? The doctor sighed and shook his head. "Young man, your case is serious." Jide's heart dropped. "What do you mean? I'll be fine, right?" The doctor adjusted his glasses. "Well, it depends." Jide's breath caught in his throat. "Depends on what?" The doctor closed the file, folded his arms, and said the most terrifying words Jide had ever heard in his life. "We might have to cut it off." Jide's soul left his body. His ears started ringing. His head spun. "You... what?" His voice came out in a hoarse scream. "It's severely burned," the doctor explained calmly, like he wasn't talking about ending Jide's entire future. "If we don't operate soon, the tissue damage will spread, and you might develop an infection." Jide's chest tightened. He couldn't breathe. "Doctor, I beg. Anything but that. I know fit survive," the doctor sighed. "We'll do our best, but you need to prepare yourself for the worst." Jide shook his head violently. "No, I no go gree. I beg do something, stitch am. Use cream, use prayer, anything, just no cut am." Before the doctor could respond, the door slammed open. Sandra stormed in, her face a mix of confusion and anger. "Jide, what happened?" Jide froze. His stomach twisted into knots. How was he supposed to explain this? "Babe, Before he could think of a lie, Kabiru entered behind her. And in the worst betrayal of all time, Kabiru folded his arms and said loud and clear, "Sandra, your boyfriend pour boiling water for hin thing because he won't make 'em big." Silence. Sandra blinked. Once, twice, then she burst out laughing. Not just small laughter, loud, uncontrollable laughter that echoed through the entire hospital room. Jide wanted to disappear. 4. Jide lay in his hospital bed, drenched in sweat. The room was dim, with only the beeping of the heart monitor and the faint hum of the air conditioner breaking the silence. He was exhausted, physically, mentally, spiritually. He had barely closed his eyes when he felt it. A presence. Cold, heavy, dark. His eyes snapped open. There at the foot of his bed stood Baba Oluto. But this wasn't the same Baba he had met in the bush. This one looked different, taller, darker. His shadow stretched unnaturally long across the hospital wall. His red beads glowed faintly under the flickering hospital light. His eyes burned with something ancient. Jide's throat went dry. "Baba?" The old man took a step forward, his voice a whisper but somehow booming inside Jide's head. "You break the rule." Jide's heartbeat doubled. What rule?" "You tell people." Baba Oluto's lips barely moved, But Jide felt the words crawl under his skin. His body went cold. Now, the gods must collect something from you. Jide tried to scream, but his body was frozen. His lungs refused to work. His vision blurred as Baba Oluto stretched out a hand. Then, darkness. Jide jerked awake, gasping. His hospital gown was soaked in sweat. His heart pounded against his ribs. "Nah, dream. Nah, just dream," he whispered, trying to calm himself. But something felt wrong. His body felt different, heavy, strange. A deep, unsettling feeling twisted in his stomach. Slowly, cautiously, he lifted the hospital blanket. And then, he screamed. Not in pain, not in fear, but in pure horror. The burns were gone, completely healed. But that wasn't the problem. His manhood was growing. Not normally, not naturally. Abnormally, too long, too thick. It pulsed, stretching, lengthening before his very eyes. "Jesus!" Jide tried to push it down, but it kept expanding like something possessed. The door burst open. Kabiru rushed in, his eyes wild. "Guy! Wettin!" His words died in his throat the moment he saw it. For a full 5 seconds, Kabiru just stood there, mouth open, eyes bulging. Then, his body wobbled. His legs gave out. And he fainted on the spot. Jide couldn't breathe. The doctors would come in any moment. The nurses would see. The world would know. And worst of all, it was still growing. To be continued. Don't miss the next part of this thrilling story. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when the next episode drops. Also, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Stay tuned for more.